Michael, what happened this week in the election that we've just lived through?
It's going to take a while to answer that question. But clearly, I think you saw the results of a man and a movement that has created a doubt about everything that is true in this country, created their own truths, and it worked because it got them to power. And I don't mean that, in a partisan way. I just mean it in a factual way. He was able to sow doubts about what the news media does amongst people who have doubted all kinds of establishment. And he created his own avenues for media. And he, through those avenues, reached out to a lot of different Americans who were just as happy to leave and go find their facts at a place that wasn't really generating fact all the time. And not only that, he was able to appeal to young men of all colors and stripes in this country. He was able to peg an agenda onto the other side about trans and LGBTQ rights, but even further than that, how they want to change the landscape and allow children to change their sex at the drop of a hat. There was no Democrat running on that or saying that, but they were able to make people think that that was a big issue in this race. But there's more to come, and everybody who has a theory about it is pretty much right.
Yeah, I mean, there were many facets to what happened. It is remarkable that this guy, I was saying it in the first hour, who was campaigning with a billionaire who's a union buster and who really didn't have any specific plans. He just had a lot of insults. I understand, no tax on overtime or whatever. I mean, I don't know. Overtime may go away in a lot of places, but more to the point, apart from that, there was very little. I mean, drill, baby, drill. But and I think that's so interesting that you correctly, after you do it, I realize you correctly assign the attack of or assigning of a political lefty agenda that involved trans people and sending your kid to school as one gender and the child coming home as another gender. I thought the very effective ad that ran, I mean, it didn't land well with me because I know it's so absurd, but ran during a lot of sporting events, which I really felt the Harris campaign, I don't understand why there weren't more Harris ads. They had all that money for the spend. But the ad, anyway, to the point is...
It ran, I think I'm going to finish your sentence here, but it ran during the World Series. It ran during NFL Sundays and Monday Night Football and Thursday Night Football. And my God, there's probably Friday Night Football that it ran. And so it was targeting men. And this was also, this was an African-American woman running for president, and that was a big part of this too.
Well, I would say this: the spot I'm thinking of was she wants to spend your tax dollars on gender reassignment surgeries for prison inmates who are here illegally. Wrapped up in that one spot is everything.
She, trans, prison, illegal. Boom.
Right. Exactly.
But I mean, it is. But we shouldn't gloss over that. This was the repudiation of a black woman, and it was at the hands of a lot of people who are not clearly ready to vote for that. There was unquestionably, there is sexism and there is racism, and it came out in this election. But the Democrats would be foolish to think that that was the only reason. They have to do a different kind of outreach on message. There are successes that you did not hear about, and in fairness to Vice President Harris. In real fairness to her, she had 3 months to run a presidential campaign. That is an insanely small amount of time. In the UK, that's an eternity. Here, it is not, because the other side had already been established and they already had their roots in place. And the messaging on the successes of the Biden administration were muted because of what I said earlier, because of they didn't try and do it enough, and I think they're going to realize that, but also because the facts with quotes around them that other people were getting on this election were not facts, and they weren't being repudiated in real time.
Right, and I've said on the show before that repudiation in real time really should have happened. I mean, to me, you could knock that stuff down. To be fair, and first of all, I made the point that you just made, which is I thought she did as well as you could do with the hand she was dealt. I mean, she got out there, she worked tirelessly, she tried to define herself, she tried to individuate. I mean, obviously that was a booted moment when she couldn't really answer what she would do differently. You could see her caught between allegiance to a president and a party, and also trying to express a difference in the future and in her policy future for America. But apart from that, I thought she did pretty well. It's just a sad fact, Michael, that I think the information machine on the right just is so much stronger. And the other thing, and I made this point
because because it's not based in fact, and do Democrats and the party and a lot of the country have to change to go along with that and create their own facts? God, that would be terrible. But is it a losing battle to just keep relying on traditional ways of sharing fact and information? I don't know. I mean, I don't know that question. That's for somebody else.
Mars says, repudiation of a black woman, sexism, racism, wow, lazy. I think those are components. I think those are legit components in this election. I mean, I don't
know what's lazy about that. I mean, that's definitely part of it. There's no question that that's part of it. Does it mean that she could not have won, or that a black woman can't win in this country? Not at all. But that was part of the race this year. The 2024 election had that as a component. You had her opponent talking about it, saying, I'm not sure if she's black or South Asian. Is she really black? Oh, now she's black. She wasn't black before. It's talked about. It doesn't matter whether you think that that is right or wrong or the chief reason. It's certainly a component of why Kamala Harris lost the presidency.
Yeah, and these, and I'm seeing it in the chat, those of you who think that may not be the chief reason, as Michael Shure just said, but I think it's a very reasonable take to suggest that was a component in the outcome. I think to push back at it any further reflects your own stubbornness on the right. I mean, my God, I think you have to know certain things about this country, and it's a weird place that we live, Michael, that we don't know so much about these people that we have so much, quote, data on. You know, we seem to slice the electorate in all these ways, and yet we end up surprised by stuff like this.
Yeah, it's true. And I get incensed when people just dismiss that as part of the reason, because it could be part of the reason why she won. It also doesn't mean that a white man would have won by saying that there was racism and sexism in this election. It's a pure fact that affected this race in some way, and I don't for a second think that there were a ton of other people who would have done better than Vice President Harris this time, but it certainly was part of it, and it's going to be part of it forever in the future of this country. When Barack Obama ran, when Jesse Jackson ran, whoever keeps running, when Cory Booker ran, they're always asked about racial identity, because when you're in a minority, that is part of the conversation, and for it will be for a long time, I would imagine.
Well, I love that you mentioned that, because as the Democrats look ahead, assuming that there is another election in this country or whatever, and we've read all of these sort of dire narratives, some of which really make a lot of sense. I mean, maybe the essential disfigurement of government that will follow GOP domination and this alt-right vision of what government should be that really requires the dismantling of the, quote, administrative state, et cetera, will prevent another election. But assuming we have another election, where is the bench strength? Who can come in? I mean, I think of these figures like Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, and these were, really charismatic people who also who really had mad-ass skills in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have to be somebody with very powerful charisma. Off the top of my head, I don't know that person exists, but there are certainly very bright people and very charismatic people. They also have to be people that connect, as Bill Clinton did, with white working class voters, as Bernie Sanders did with white working class voters. It's going to have to be that type, as Ronald Reagan did with white working class voters. And it's not just white working class voters, because Latino and black working class voters were part of the group that left the Democratic Democratic ticket this year. So it's going to have to be somebody like that. Off the top of my head, I don't have that magic person, but the charisma has to be powerful, maybe even more powerful than the message in this next election, which is 4 years away, and the people are counting the minutes to it. But it's a long time, 4 years, and a lot is going to change in this country. A lot may change with the future President Trump too, in terms of his health, in terms of the job he does, in terms of people say, oh my God, that they've got a rubber stamp for everything. Well, there are people that are going to be running against that administration from within their own party later too, that will have to be monitored to see how they split, because there are a lot of people who want to be president who are Republicans who are not J.D. Vance and don't want to see him ascend. So there's going to be a lot of tumult in that party, not yet and not for a couple of years, but you'll see it. And that will help probably define who the next Democrat to rise will be. I know that Gavin Newsom is a name that people talk about. He's got charisma, but I think that people will probably see Gavin Newsom as California and liberal and coiffed and all those things. And it's I would not immediately announce my intentions if I were Gavin Newsom. There are going to be a lot of names that come up and names that you don't know right now. But it's going to have to be someone of powerful, really powerful charisma. And I think they're going to have to change some of the way the leaders in Congress, specifically Chuck Schumer, operate in the minority. They're going to have to be a lot tougher and angrier, and they're going to have to push back harder to get people inspired.
Try this on for size.
It won't fit.
Democrats
it'll be too small on me, I promise.
Democrats have a branding problem.
Yeah.
The party has a branding problem. And here's the branding problem. I touched on it last hour. You've got a president, and I kind of touched on it in just the beginning of this conversation, who really did step up for working people. Had the COVID relief plan, the transformational infrastructure plan that included negotiation on drug prices, capping the price of insulin, the tax credit for child care. He walked the picket line with workers in Detroit. Yet somehow Trump and the GOP is seen as the party of the populace, the party of the working man. So I think this is branding because there are no facts to back it up.
Right. Well, it goes to what we were saying before. Branding is facts, how you represent yourself, and whether or not you want to use facts to do that or not. I think what we've also seen is the successes of the Biden administration in the modern age require a younger, more exuberant, more, I would say, out there president than someone who was older in the traditional mold of presidents who spoke to 3 newspapers and 3 networks and went to bed. That isn't real anymore, right? And I don't know when that went away, but it went away because of progress, because of social media, because of the way different people get their information. But you need somebody out there selling it. And while Joe Biden may have been a good president, part of being a good president is also selling your presidency. And he wasn't able to do that. He chose not to. They chose to protect him. He didn't do press conferences. It's super important to be out there, to be charismatic, to also be funny, to be somebody who has repartee with the press. There has to be a lot more contact with America for Democrats. And Harris fell short on that too in her short run for the presidency. I suspect as a president, she would have been a lot better at it, but as a candidate, she didn't really have time to do that.
The reality of the modern media age and the messaging age is just what you said. I mean, you've got to be out there all the time in all the different ways. I mean, Trump was an early adopter on Twitter with his mad-ass middle-of-the-night tweets.
Oh, no, Mark, let me interrupt you for a second. I went to Las Vegas, which I think you've been.
I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah. I went there and went to the Trump Hotel to cover Trump endorsing Mitt Romney. This was in 2012. And I asked Donald Trump on camera with a mic, I said, what does your endorsement mean? Why does your endorsement matter? Businessman, whatever. And he said, I got a lot of followers on Twitter. And the whole press gaggle, this was in 2012, kind of chuckled at that being important. Well, he had the last laugh. There's no question.
Poorly educated whites, says No Contendo, cannot stomach seeing a person of color, especially black people, elevated to the highest office. And USA was and is built on biases. Kamala Harris had college vote. Yeah, I think there are a lot of biases. Look, she didn't get that vote that you're talking about, the poor white vote, but she also didn't get a lot of other vote, as Michael has noted, Latino vote. I mean, the people who didn't show up for Kamala Harris are as noteworthy as the people who did show up for Donald Trump. I mean, women, you felt there, and you kind of, this is the Kool-Aid that I was drinking, was that they showed up in pretty big numbers midterms, and they would show up and vote for Kamala Harris in the general. I was tentative about it on this show. I wasn't sure of it, but I thought if she's going to win, I think it will be a repudiation of these very male-centric kinds of views of where women should be in society.
Yeah, I think we all fell for that. It wasn't just the midterms; it was special elections that happened. It was municipal elections in the off years. It really was a big part of what went into guessing here about who was going to be the president. Also, we always knew it was going to be a close race. We talked about it here, right? I mean, we talked about the fact that this was a close race and we didn't know which way it was going to go, and it remained close. I mean, it's not close because there was a sweep of the blue wall in all the states that he needed to win, but in those states it was also, it was close in most of them, it's just you have to rejigger what Democrats do, and it's going to be tough in the next couple of years to be able to do that. And I wouldn't, they do these autopsies, these post-mortems on what happened in an election. I wouldn't think too hard about the candidate and the message, and should they have gone to Wisconsin at the end instead of Philadelphia, all those things. Those aren't that, and Democrats tend to do that sort of thing. Both parties do. This is a massive look at the way they message and the way they brand and the way they take voters for granted. Both parties have done it in the past, and Democrats are the ones falling victim to doing it now.
Kim?
In looking at the post-mortem of the election, you get a sense of who voted for Kamala Harris and who didn't. Black ladies turned out for Kamala Harris bigly. White ladies, not so much. What happened to the white ladies? Were we not caring about our rights? Were we being too deferential to men? What happened to us?
It's hard to say. A lot of, pinning the woke agenda, the price of eggs, and the fallacy that we have open borders on the Biden administration is what brought down or what elevated Donald Trump more than brought down Kamala Harris. So identity politics wasn't everything, but for a lot of people, identity politics is super important. But there are lots of issues out there on which there was, you have to, when you're the vice president, it's why it's so tough to run as the vice president, even though you have an advantage because of your name recognition, is that you have to stick to your administration and the things that they did that were good, and not run from that. But she was in a very tough spot on Gaza, on immigration, on all of those things. And they did a good job of pegging everything that was wrong on her, right? I mean, when I would ask Trump voters if they give Mike Pence a lot of credit for, the 4 years of the Trump administration that they loved so much, they would say, no, hell no, hell no, hell no. But in fact, that's just the same as giving blame to Kamala Harris for the Biden.
Sure.
Vice presidents do nothing. So
those are wild moments when I watched that stuff that you did in the field. Randy says it's not just messaging. The Dems have some policy things to reconsider. Let me just speak quickly to that and see if you agree. I actually think on policy, the Democrats are pretty good. I mean, they cleaned up the economy. They did all that stuff I talked about in the transformational infrastructure package. I think they really reach out to the working class voters in a way that the Republicans do not. But as Michael Shure has noted, their ability to message what they're doing, to scream it from the rooftops as Trump does, that is just really sadly not there. And then, as Michael also mentions, the GOP does, they make crap up. I mean, just literally the stuff that was running in those campaign commercials is not true. So,
Right.
so I don't think it's, they're Democrats, the policy things to reconsider. I don't know about that. But maybe
Well,
Randy's right. I don't know.
I think I think everybody's right a little bit. I think Randy's right a little bit. I think that and if it's not actual policy, it's the way they prioritize things, the way they talk about things, what their toughness on policy, and standing up for the fact that, in fact, when there's no response machine on policy. So they could say, well, the infrastructure bill that all these Republicans voted for was a terrible bill, right? Well, the Republicans say, drill, baby, drill. We're drilling more than we have before. Border crossings are today are far less than they were on the last day of Trump's presidency. Immigration, I think where Randy is right is they have to articulate one of the things that Democrats always criticized about Republicans to good effect was when they would say Obamacare is bad, and they didn't have a plan. Right. And the same thing for Democrats. You have to have a plan. You have to have a policy. You have to have a response legislatively to the things that you are being criticized for. So I do think that in that case that they have to look at policy, but I think it's more prioritization of policy. Look, they were for the workers and they lost the workers. They fought for like hell for minimum wage and they lost workers because it wasn't perceived that they liked workers, the Democrats. I mean, these are absurd things that they didn't have a response for. So I do think it's messaging and branding, but Randy's right too. We're all right. I mean, there are lots of elements that everybody's saying that have to be put in there. But I do think at the end of the day, it's about how you present en masse as with charisma and individually with charisma.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I talk about charisma a lot on this show, and I really believe in it. And I'm sorry. And I've talked about Trump with this weird, eerie charisma. I find him a super interesting guy to watch, even as I find his approach to life and to government completely loathsome. I do think that they made political hay of the immigration situation in a really an amplified way, and it's a legitimate problem, but it's been a legitimate problem through the Trump presidency, through the Obama presidency, and through the Biden presidency. But Trump was right. Don't pass that bill because I want to be able to run on and smear the Democrats on immigration. And he was right because that moment, the transformative nature of that bill, that essentially was a GOP-authored immigration bill, that would have stolen headlines and stolen attention, that this crew is making progress on immigration, and Trump wanted to use that as a talking point.
And that didn't bother enough people either. That's the thing. People are not bothered enough by what is out there. There's this whole feeling that nothing matters. And it's hard to be talking, I mean, to what Randy's saying and to what you're saying, it's hard to be talking about policy when it seems like nothing matters, like the headlines matter, like the sound bites matter, but like labeling the other side matters. Well, it mattered in this election and it worked. And the Democrats have to learn a little bit about not just policy and messaging, but how to navigate this new environment, which they're clearly not able to do, and they need leadership, and they need a front person to lead them out of this. Martin Luther King was the civil rights movement, and one of the people who criticized the Black Lives Matter movement say they didn't have a king. They don't have somebody that can galvanize. They can galvanize around. Similar to Bernie Sanders, right? Does the progressive movement have the next Bernie Sanders? I think not right now. That person may and will emerge certainly, but it's not. You have to, in this country, have somebody that can be the lightning rod. Trump was clearly an effective lightning rod, and the Democrats don't have that now.
Tell me what happened in down ballot races, because I think this is really, I mean, in the chat, I see it just all about Trump and Harris, and I get it. That was a bellwether. But down ballot races also really told us stuff, didn't it?
Yeah, they did. I mean, they tell you certain things, right? I mean, they tell you that there's an adherence to Donald Trump, that there are people that still ballot split, that Tammy Baldwin, a Democratic senator from Wisconsin, won her race Tammy Baldwin happens to be an out homosexual as well, in a year where they were otherized in ways that they hadn't been in a while, as a group and lumped in with other groups. And so that means there was obviously ticket splitting, which we don't think we see a lot because most people are pretty tribal now. Same thing in Michigan with Alyssa Slotkin. Jackie Rosen it looks like she's going to win re-election in Nevada, and looks like Trump will actually end up winning Nevada by a little bit. So the down ballot races take a little while to decipher. Usually Americans like gridlock. They like when one house of Congress is in control of one group and vice versa. And so it takes a while to look at that. But in effect, people were saying that they want change, and they want they don't like the direction, that we always say right direction, wrong direction. And every year pundits say, well, this, that's an old model. People, the right direction, wrong direction thing doesn't matter like it used to. Well, people think this country is going in the wrong direction, largely because of the cost of gas and the price of eggs. And it was a wrong direction election because people who thought that all voted the other way.
And as you say, they tag whoever's in power with whatever their grievance is. I mean, it just is a fact.
Well, which we do. We all blame the coach, right? Fire the coach. We have remote controls. We change the channel if we don't like what's on, and we go to the next channel. It's the same thing that you see in politics, and it just takes a little longer because you have to wait 2 to 4 years in order to do that.
I talk about messaging because I feel as though most voters aren't people who get the alerts that we get all the time. I mean, my phone is pinging constantly with alerts from every major publication, even podcasts, these off the beaten track publications or Substacks. Most people aren't like that. They're just trying to, make it to the end of the day, pick up the kids for, soccer practice or it's a cliche to say it, but it's really true that people are low information voters, and that's not a damning of them. It's a fact. They have a lot of other stuff that's getting in the way of, sorry, I can't be up on whatever the latest thing that, the Democrats said.
Right.
And so the messaging I come back to, because you have to be able to communicate to those people who are really they may hear it from Joe Rogan or, a Theo Vaughn or whomever. I mean, that really is kind of a place that has to be viewed as a real legitimate vessel for information.
And we live in a society now where people vent, and people, from Karens on up, people are not afraid to say what's pissing them off, except for Democrats, right? If Democrats are pissed off at Israel, right? And say you're pissed off at Israel, say you want to do more, say you want to take, it doesn't mean that every Jewish voter in America is going to abandon you, because a lot of what you stand for appeals to Jewish voters. It doesn't mean that every Jewish voter has Israel as their number one issue. And also, I'm not saying that decided this election, but in general, if you're pissed off at something, an era where people say that they're pissed off, show it and be pissed off about it. And the joy that emanated from the Harris-Walz campaign, I love that. I love that. It didn't work, right? Most people don't like it now. I hate that most people don't care for that. I hate that, but I'm not going to change that. So go in the other direction and get pissed off a little bit. I never saw this candidate pissed off. I never saw, it's like when they go high, we go, or when they go low, we go high. Well, I think Democrats might have to start going low a little bit. And it pains me to say that, but I think it's true.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think it's you're just not going to win the game with this playbook.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Mark. Correct me. It's not going low to get pissed off. It's just saying what you believe. Going out there and not being afraid. Don't be afraid of X vote or what this thing is going to say. Because in the end, if you're doing the right thing and your policies are sound on things that are important to everyday Americans, and unemployment is down and inflation never reached the places where they said it was going to be, and you responded to criticism about immigration, and you're able to articulate that, then you're going to win, or you're going to lose in a way that at least you do it having tried to fight the battle. I don't feel like Democrats fought a battle this time.
I do think that a plain-spoken communicator like Bernie Sanders with a real message to real people, gosh, I think Bernie Sanders, he's still magnificent in the way he communicates. And in my judgment, could have been just a little bit tweaked and probably even won that election. I know that Hillary was clearly on track to
Yeah,
at
and
least
he's a little
retop the ticket.
untweakable, like Trump. I mean, some of these people you can't really tweak.
Yeah, that's true. No, he was definitely untweakable.
Yeah,
but somebody said something here, and then I'll let you go. And I kind of thought it was interesting. And of course, it leads back to, and I'm sure you're going to say, yeah, this is part of it too. Nessa Bug says Harris ran a good campaign and feel if Biden had stated earlier not to run, I think Harris would have won. I don't know about winning, but definitely the fact that there was no primary, that Biden, didn't follow his one-term presidency plan, that did change this thing dramatically.
Well, except that he did. I'm always going to credit President Biden for leaving the race. It's really hard to be president of the United States and say, I'm not going to run. Very few have ever done it. And I think that he did not see, he's still the only person who's beaten Donald Trump. And he did not see that anybody else could at that point. It was hubris. It was annoying. And he did the right thing and got out. Had he gotten out a little earlier, maybe they're right. I don't think that anything that I saw on Tuesday told me that the Democrats were going to win this race, no matter when Biden left or if Biden stayed or if Michelle Obama ran or anything. The dynamics of this race and the Trump machine, the way it worked, in retrospect now, because we can do that on Tuesday, I don't think it would have changed very much.
Yeah, sadly,
we'll never
I'd agree.
That,
I'd agree. Yeah.
And Josh Shapiro wouldn't have won Pennsylvania. We can, that this was not an election about Josh Shapiro having been the correct choice. I don't know that he would or wouldn't have, but clearly to me, the country wasn't going to elect Kamala Harris.
That's right. Although, listen, I will say this wasn't it wasn't a sweeping victory a la Barack Obama's electoral college victory. You know what I mean, Michael Shure?
No, not yet. But I mean, he painted a blue wall red, and that has its effect, right? I mean, so I agree, and I said it earlier. If you drill down and you see how close all these races were, it was a close election in that way. But 10 million fewer people voted for Kamala Harris, and don't quote me on that, but it's approximate, then voted for Joe Biden last time. So something was lost. And that's why I don't think this was an election that would have been decided by, I never think elections are decided, that, by vice presidential candidates, but certainly not this one.
We need our reality game show host fake billionaire to represent all that is holy in future elections.
Yeah.
We definitely need something for...
Ken Jennings.
Ken Jennings, 2028.
Yeah.
Michael, love your takes. Thank you for holding our hand, and look forward to next time.
Mark, I shaved. No mention of the fact that I shaved.
I know, it was weird. I saw something that I just didn't recognize, and it's, of course, your face.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll cover
you don't
it.
have to go out and stand there and 10
enough,
below anymore.
Back up, I think.
Yeah, stand below and ask
There's
people.
never
why
been
they're
anything
voting.
like this.
Yeah, it was really something.
No more.
Anyway.
Let's work on our drops too. I think it's time to edit out.
And this is their new hoax.
Yeah, no, goodbye.
You want to get rid of all
of
those? All right. Here's the never seen anything like it that we use now is.
I've never seen anything like it.
That's new. I mean, he just said that in the last few months. You never seen anything like it. You're going to get a lot of those. Yeah. But Tim Wall's drops are going to have to get rid of.
I've tried to do the best I can.
I think that
he did a very good job. He was
did.
fine. Yeah,
he did. I don't know. Anyway, good times, Michael Shure. Thank you, Michael Shure, everybody.
Really good time.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.